Eubank Ben 2. Do you think the result of the first fight gives either man the psychological edge going into the rematch?
That's a great question. I think definitely for Chris, he'll feel that he's better than Conor Benn. He pulled it off down the stretch. I think there were times in the fight that I thought Conor could win it, but I then became convinced Chris would as the rounds ticked by. Very, very high octane fight, terrific fight where they bared their souls in there. Both of them came on from that fight. The Chris's best win of his career, arguably, certainly the most high profile, and Connor's best performance in many ways, even though he lost. And he was jumping up in weights. It was always that difficulty. What would Chris be like at that limit? What would Connor be like coming up? And it made for a very, very entertaining scrap. So I expect another one similar. Maybe Connor will just try and aim to stick to a more tactical game plan rather than just get involved and think he can nail Eubank. But I think he felt that he hurt him in there. So you just don't know maybe whether tactics will go out the window. Eubank clocks him a couple of times and suddenly it just it refuels where it was in April. But psychological advantage, Eubank's got to have that because he's one up. But at the same time, I think Conor Benn feels that he came on from that fight, and now he knows he can handle Chris, or certainly he went the distance with him. So I think Conor will be full of vigor and freshness in this rematch. And Chris, it's a few months down the line. He's a little bit older, still got to make that weight again. So although he should again start as favourite, and the yeah, the feeling probably is that Eubank will find a way again with no certainty this time. I think the gaps probably close because of what happened and the fact that a few months have gone by. And if Connor can fight without, or with his head rather than his heart, without that burning intensity, it could be very interesting because we don't know what Eubank Jr.'s got left. Does he see this as another victory that he gets a lot of money from and he can still win a world title, or is the long career finally sort of just coming down? Crawford was amazing the other week, but maybe that was partly because Canelo is slightly on the slide and not quite the power, the force he once was, taking nothing away from Terence, who I thought won by bigger margins than the judges gave him. I thought it was an absolute masterclass, but I just felt Terence would win that fight because partly of Canelo as well as him. I thought he'd be quick enough and good enough even at that weight with his IQ, but I think because of Canelo, and if you look at Chris's career, he's had a tough, long career, and Conor's definitely fresher. So yeah, it's a very interesting rematch. And look, the first fight between the dads was thrilling, and the second fight was a little bit more cagey. We might have that again. I just can't see these two once they hurt each other a little bit just standing off. I think it's going. There's going to be pockets of fire again in this one, and I can't pick a winner, and I don't want to because I'll have a mic in my hand, and I just want to enjoy it like everyone else.
Absolutely. You mentioned obviously Conor Ben is 1-0 down, but Chris is that little bit older. Father Time is undefeated, as we know. Who will go into this fight with a bit more pressure on their shoulders?
Again, another good question. I think they both got pressure on their shoulders, but look, this is a history. This is a boxing legacy story. We had all four of them there first time around. I'm sure we will again. They go back 3 decades or more. This rivalry, this bitterness, this intensity. They're never going to be best mates, Chris and Connor, but I do think that they will have respect for each other. I think they already do, but I think they'll have more respect for each other when they both retire. I could see them doing the after dinner circuit, and you may not have that, but Froch and Groves were real enemies, and they sort of mellowed with age, maturity, and the fact that they needed each other. Pereira and Morales, they really hated each other, and it took their wives to get them to have family meals again together. So look, there's always a way when you have that spirit in the ring. I, I don't know. I think Connor will, if he loses, will just go down in weight, and they'll just say, look, it was at middleweight, and he'll go down to a weight or two beneath and go again for a world title. He's got plenty of time. So I think probably there's more pressure on Chris. And he puts pressure on himself, doesn't he, with the shenanigans at the press conferences and some of the very intelligent stuff he says and some of the naughty stuff and some of the difficult stuff. But he does, and he loves it. That's who he is. He's his father's son, and Connor's very much Nigel's son. Connor is all rough and ready and says what he believes, and he's yeah, it's all heart with Connor, which is why he's got to use his head this time around. And I said before last time that Tony Sims was going to play a massive part. I think even more so this time, he's got to keep Connor on that sort of leash. But yeah, I think probably more pressure on Chris because he puts it on himself. But yeah, there's pressure on both of them. 70,000 watching, millions around the world. This is why they do it. They were born to box, these two, because they've come from their fathers. And yeah, people would have thought there's no way they could have done because of the weight difference. I remember when Connor came onto the ringside set and he was about 15 or 16, and we did a special with Nigel, and I remember looking at him thinking, "There's no way he'll ever get anywhere near Chris in terms of weight." And look what's happened. Things do mysteriously change in boxing, and if there's money to be made, entertainment, it's the biggest rematch of the year, as you say, and everyone's going to be watching it again. So yeah, look, may the best guy win. We're going to have some more twists and turns in the build up, and look, I just hope it's even three quarters as good as the first fight, because I thought the first fight, a lot of people were saying it wasn't a world title, it was slightly lower level, but I just thought it was an absolutely pulsating fight, um, where they bared their souls in there. And after all the hoopla in the build up, they did it. The boys did it. And let's hope they can go there again. Can they? Will they? Must they? All questions we'll find out November the 15th.
Absolutely. And do you know what? You mentioned it's a great, great fight, and both fighters really, really performed on the night. But did you see any weaknesses in either fighter?
Yeah, I think at times Connor um, was a bit raw and was outboxed by Chris. Certainly down the stretch where I thought Connor was going to come on because of that youth. And Chris closed the show really well. I thought there were a couple of times where Chris was hurt a little bit, which we don't normally see with Eubank. Um, but he rode storms. I thought it was a great performance from Eubank Jr., actually, under a lot of pressure with all the weight issues and that difficulty. And I remember saying to Eddie that if they have a rematch, which I expected them to always have, I would like to have seen it maybe at 162 or 163, just to give Chris a little bit more wriggle room. But it's not. And I know Ben Shalom is going on about the rehydration clause and whether that's in or not. And I'm sure there'll be drama up till the weigh in, as there was last time. Who knows whether there'll be more money to be paid, etc. That's all to unfold. But yeah, I mean, both of them will have felt they had advantages in there. I remember Declan Rice was sitting right behind me, and he's a big mate of Connor's. And after about 5 rounds, he goes, "What do you think? What do you think? You think Connor's going to win it?" And at that point, I thought, I think he's got a chance here. But then by sort of round 10, 11, I thought it was Eubank's fight. And so I think both of them will feel that they had edges in there and advantages in there. They'll only know themselves if they were badly hurt, whether they felt they were slightly outboxed at times or whether they felt they were very evenly matched. It was a Eubank win decisively. Yeah, he won by 2, 3, 4 rounds, I think it was on the cards. I mean, he won the fight, but it was close and it was very, very competitive each round. So there were fine margins. So I think both of them will go into it thinking they're going to win it this time. A fighter has to have that mindset. We talked about Ben Crocker and Sean McComb. Same at any level. Your fighter goes in if they're defending titles or winning records or on huge stages and even whatever they're getting paid for their careers. They have to have that unbelievably intense winning mentality. But yeah, I think both will feel that they've got edges and both will try and exploit the others, and that's the magic, isn't it? It's interesting that Bo Max come on board with Chris because he's the hot trainer of the moment, I guess. And I remember Amir Khan, even though he was done really when he fought Kell Brook. I remember him telling me how good a trainer Bomac was when they spent time together with Terence, and really interesting. And Amir had been obviously with quite a few trainers. So yeah, that's a plus, I would say, for Chris. But then Tony Sims knows Conor inside and out, so they won't worry about that at all. They've got a nice, healthy relationship, and Conor will push on the fact that not many people stick around Chris, but Chris chooses who he wants around him. He selects. He's a businessman first and foremost, and a very successful one, and actually a very likable one. Off out of all, they both are very likable off the dais and whatever. But they're very, very different. They're both actually very good communicators, but in very, very different ways. And that's what we love. We love polar opposites. We love stories. We love characters. It's what makes this. But what made their whole event last time was the fact that two of them left it in the ring. And if they can do that again, look, if Connor wins, there'll be a trilogy. Their names are etched together forever, whoever they end up fighting after this.
Absolutely.